Welcome to Grow Money Business, the podcast dedicated to helping business owners grow both their wealth and business on their own terms. Here's your host, Grant Bledsoe.
Hello, everybody. Grant Bledsoe here. Welcome back to Grow Money Business. This week on the show, I'd like to introduce to you all the Small Business Owner's Financial Order of Operations. The Financial Order of Operations is meant to be a checklist that you can use to your own benefit if you're not sure where to start with your own personal finances as a small business owner. A lot of people in the financial media over the years have used a checklist approach to financial planning pretty successfully over the decades. Dave Ramsey is one that comes to mind, who has a 7-step checklist he calls the baby steps to financial planning that has been very successful and has helped a whole lot of people. The problem is when you own a small business, which is precisely what we talk about here on this show, the intersection of personal finance for business owners, it may not be terribly applicable to you. That being the case, I've taken that concept and built a 10-step small business owner's financial order of operations that I think is a great first step when it comes to financial planning for small business owners. It's not going to be directly applicable to everyone. Not everyone, but a lot of people probably have unique circumstances in which you might want to go out of order or skip a step, and that's all well and good. But outside of those customized personal situations, this 10-step checklist is a really good start for most small business owners out there who are trying to get a head start on their personal finances. So in today's episode, I describe what each of these 10 steps are, why I put the 10 steps together in the first place, as well as a little bit of context about Dave Ramsey and his checklist, and I hope you find it helpful. Hey everyone, I need to interject quickly to remind you all that nothing found in today's episode or any other episode of Grow Money Business should be considered financial, investing, legal, tax, fitness, or even relationship advice. It's content that you're free to use and to deploy on your own terms. And before taking any actions on content found on the show, please do consult with your tax professional, your attorney, or your financial planner. If you don't have a financial planner, head on over to threeoakswealth.com to learn more about what we do in terms of financial planning and investments and how we help clients on an ongoing basis. So in today's episode, I'd like to talk a little bit about financial order of operations as it relates to small business owners. And the background here is that a lot of financial planning, when people come into our office and look for help organizing their finances, they're trying to accomplish certain goals, they want to build wealth on their own terms, maybe retire sometime. There are all these things people are trying to do. And our job at the financial planning firm is to help people make decisions and organize their stuff around those ideals, their values, and those objectives. And so when people come into the office, everybody's a little bit different. Usually there's something acute going on, a decision that they might have coming up, or some kind of transition coming up that they have to make some decisions around, which is the primary reason that they're in and kind of takes priority at first. But the idea is that we're prioritizing all the stuff that happens in someone's financial life in a way that's most relevant to them. A lot of financial practitioners and some really famous financial and financial adjacent professionals have used a slightly different method. And what I'm describing is when somebody comes into our office, we're coming up with the personalized plan based on what's going on with them. It's totally custom based on their situation and, again, their values and objectives and all that context and background. There are other people, particularly in the financial media, that use a one-to-many approach. And one example of that is Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey, you've probably heard of him, has this massive financial media network. He has a radio show that's been turned into a podcast, and he just has this huge following. And what Dave has done over the years is built out this checklist system to communicate how people should organize and optimize their finances. And so rather than coming up with a custom approach for every single person, he has this checklist that he calls financial baby steps. And to give you an example, I'll go through the 7 steps. There's 7 steps on this. Step 1 is save up a $1,000 starter emergency fund. Step 2 is pay off all your debt except for your mortgage. Step 3 is expand that emergency fund to 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. Step 4 is save 15% of your income for retirement. Step 5 is save for your kids' education. Step 6, pay off your mortgage early. And step 7, build wealth and give. Well, Dave Ramsey has been a controversial figure in finance for quite a while. Part of that, I think, is for good reason. And where he gets most of his criticism is he makes assumptions in his financial guidance that technically are kind of nonsense, to be totally honest. First of all, he assumes that stocks are going to go up on average 12% per year over a long period of time. He assumes that you can take out a huge amount from a retirement portfolio without ever running out of money. I think his withdrawal rate assumptions are like 7 or 8% or something like that. And when you dig into the math and the technicalities, those are frankly kind of dangerous assumptions to use. And so for that reason, I haven't been here's another example. He has, when it comes to paying off debt, he has this snowball approach where you line up all your debts. So, for example, if you have a mortgage, an auto loan, and a credit card balance, well, he would suggest that you pay off the debt first with the smallest balance, regardless of the interest rate. So let's say that you have $2,500 left on an auto loan that's at a 3% interest rate, but you have $15,000 of credit card debt that's paying 18% per year. Well, the math shows that you ought to, if you're trying to extinguish your debt as quickly as you can, you should pay off the highest interest rate debt first. You pay off the credit card first, then you move to the next lowest interest rate and just work down that way. Dave's approach is a little bit different. He suggests that you should pay off the smallest balance loans first to reduce the number of outstanding loans that you have, regardless of the size of those outstanding loans. And technically, that's not the path to maximize your wealth faster. So Dave's captured some criticism over the years for those perspectives. Now, there's a valid argument to the snowball approach, by the way, and the pay off the lowest interest rate first approach works for a lot of people. It's not right for everyone. There's a psychological advantage if you have 6 different outstanding debts. Even if the smallest debt has the lowest interest rate, it's pretty nice to knock that off and now move from 6 outstanding debts to 5, even though the rates might be a little bit higher. So there's a momentum and psychological benefit, I think, to that approach. But that aside, Dave has a templated approach here that allows him to communicate his financial planning perspectives to a whole lot of people. And the followers of his show have done wonderful things with their personal finances by following these steps. And as much as I'm not, an extreme advocate of everything that he preaches, I think that he's really helped a lot of people, and it's just something that he ought to be really proud of. That being said, so that's the context. That being said, what I want to do today is communicate a 10-step financial order of operations for small business owners. So Dave's 7-step baby steps list is good for most people. Small business owners that we typically work with in the practice just have different needs. Those needs tend to be somewhat consistent. And so what I've done here is tweaked the order of operations to promote personal and business financial stability. And what I want to do in the show today is just go over these 10 steps that I think most people can use as a starting point with regard to their own financial planning. This is kind of boilerplate. The order in which I'll describe these is not right for everyone. There are circumstances where you might want to go out of order. You might want to skip one step entirely, right? This is not customized. But in general, this is an approach I think is going to work for a lot of people who are small business owners trying to do the best they can with their finances and set themselves up for success long-term in building wealth. So the first step is to establish a baseline emergency fund. Dave Ramsey suggested $1,000. My perspective is that business owners need a little bit more than that in step number one. And what I would suggest is step number one, start your baseline emergency fund by saving up 1 month's worth of personal expenses. I've talked about emergency funds quite a bit in the past on the show. They're really important because, especially when you're running the business, there are just things that can happen that are out of your control that can impact your income. And what you don't want to do is have to leverage your assets, take out a second mortgage, take out a business loan, or sell your investments at a period where it's inconvenient. We're trying to buy low and sell high with your investments and allow those investments to grow and compound for a long period of time. And having a little bit of cash available helps you avoid having to sell investments when they're down to raise cash to pay your living expenses. And coincidentally, the stuff that happens in the world that might cause the markets to go down often coincides with bad times in the economy and challenging business environments. So at the same time, when you might need the cash in your household, business might be a little bit tight and cash might be a little bit tight in the business too. So step number one is in a liquid, accessible, high yield savings account, save 1 month's worth of personal expenses. Okay, that's the first step. Step number two is establishing a baseline emergency fund in your business too. Also, 1 month's worth of operating expenses. Okay, so start with your household, add up all your expenses, rent, mortgage, food, energy, everything that you pay for every single month, save that much in a savings account. Step number two, do the exact same thing for your business so that you don't have to do anything drastic if income or if revenue dries up or falls a little bit, or if your expenses grow in a way that you didn't expect. There are so many things that can happen to where you need a little bit of cash on the sidelines. Now, that's not ultimately all the cash you want to keep on hand. And I'll circle back to this in a few steps. Step number one, 1 month's worth of personal expenses in a household account. Step number two, 1 month's worth of business expenses in a business account. Step number three is you want to pay off all your high interest rate debt. This goes for the personal and the business side. If you have credit card debt, either through the business or personally, you want to pay that off. If you have any kinds of personal loans, really, I'd say anything north of 8% interest rate is something that you want to pay off as soon as you possibly can. Could be a student loan. It could be a lot of forms of debt that might incur a high rate of interest. And so you want to use all your available cash to knock those things off next. Step number four is you want to expand your personal emergency fund. Always start with the personal side, the household side, before the business side. In step number four, I would suggest expanding your emergency fund from 1 month's worth of expenses to somewhere between 3 and 9 months worth of expenses. Some people might even need more than that. W-2 employees typically have a little bit more job stability than income stability that business owners have. And so if you own a business and you have the exact same financial profile as somebody who is a W-2 employee, you probably need a little bit larger emergency fund than your W-2 employee friend. That's just how it goes. You incur a little bit more risk. You need more months worth of cash runway in that circumstance. So step four, I would suggest expanding your emergency fund to somewhere between 3 and 9 months. Step number five, expand the business cash fund. You don't need to go all the way up to 9 months worth of expenses in the business. This depends a little bit on industry. It depends a little bit on variability of cash flow, what your expense profile looks like, the capitalization of the company, and so forth. Usually somewhere between 3 and 6 months, but I would probably start by targeting 3 months worth of operating expenses in cash in the business at all times. Once you have those in place, personal emergency fund, business emergency fund, all your high interest rate debts paid off, then we go to tax advantaged savings. establish a company retirement plan and try to save at least 15% of your income. You have a lot of flexibility, a lot of opportunity to customize a workplace retirement plan to your liking. It'll depend, the details should depend on whether you have employees, how much you want to provide a benefit, how comfortable you are making the contributions year in, year out, even if it's a bad business environment. There are a lot of options when it comes to establishing the workplace retirement plan. But the whole point of it is when you have it in place, you put $1 into the plan, you don't pay income tax on the dollar that went in. So try to save 15% of your income, defer all the income tax on those savings. There are Roth options out there too that might be a good fit depending on the circumstances where you pay tax on the contributions now, but don't pay tax on them later. That could be a good fit as well. But step 6, establish the company retirement plan. If you don't have one yet, save 15% of your income. Step 7, circle back to your debt. Pay off all other non-mortgage debt. Okay, so in step 3, we want to pay off all your high interest rate debt above 8%. Step 7, you want to pay off everything else. So if you have outstanding auto loans, student loans, whatever, even if it's not at a terribly high rate, maybe 4, 5, 6%, knock that off next. Now, again, this is a little bit of a dealer's choice. Some people will prefer to maintain maybe an auto loan that they're paying 3% on and take the extra cash and invest it more aggressively in their retirement accounts, or maybe in a taxable account or in some other way. Maybe rental real estate is an option for that. And that's all well and good. That's totally fine. In general, it makes a lot of sense to pay off your debts because it gives you more financial flexibility. And for small business owners, the more financial flexibility that you have, the better off you're going to be. Because packaged correctly, packaged well, the value in your small business can be a huge driver of wealth. And you just want to make sure that you can keep that business viable and stay in the game to keep that option on the table for you. So that's why I say pay off other debts. For most people, pay off other debts before investing aggressively in taxable accounts or elsewhere. Step 8, after you've got the other non-mortgage debts paid off, circle back to the retirement plan and maximize all the supplemental retirement savings options that you have. So an example of that might be, you've been putting 15% of your income into the 401k, but you could increase the profit sharing contribution that you make and put another, $20,000 a year in for yourself and maybe some in for employees as well. That's all tax deductible. We want to use those tax advantage savings options that we have at our disposal. So step 8, we want to max those out. Maybe it's entertaining a cash balance plan in the business. Maybe it's doing backdoor Roth IRA conversions on top of the company 401k or SEP IRA that you have set up. There are a lot of different shades of gray here, but step 8 is we want to maximize all the retirement savings options we have at our disposal. Step number 9, after we've done that, now we want to circle back and start saving for our kids' education. It's way more important for us in general to save for our own financial well-being, our own retirement, than it is to finance the kids' college. As much as we don't want to saddle our kids with a whole bunch of student debt, they can still borrow to go to school. It's going to be pretty hard for us to borrow to pay our grocery and our heating bills when we're 85. There are just more options available to student borrowers. So we want to prioritize our own retirement, circle back to the kids' college education, and maybe other savings for the kids in step 9 after we've maximized all our retirement savings avenues. And then in step number 10, that's when we want to start building wealth. Okay. So if you've gotten all the way from step 1 through step 9, you've got an emergency fund in your household, you've got an emergency fund in your business, you've paid off all your debts other than your mortgage, you're saving as much as you can in tax-advantaged retirement accounts. If you've done all that and you have money left over, now it's time to start thinking about building wealth. Now, all the other steps 1 through 9 that you've already done, those are absolutely building wealth. But in step number 10, that's when we can explore different options. And as a small business owner, there are just a lot of shades of gray here. You could aggressively reinvest more profits from the business back into the business, accelerate growth. You could staff up, entertain new types of businesses. You could look to acquire and grow by acquiring other shops. You can invest in taxable accounts. You can consider alternative investments. You can consider investment real estate. Maybe you pay off the mortgage at that point if you want. Maybe you increase gifts to charity. Think about maybe a vacation home or something like that. But we want to have steps 1 through 9 all checked off before we think strongly about any of those options. Once you have all that stuff in a good place, you have a very solid foundation, and you can really explore some of these other aggressive options. But those options, by and large, shouldn't be considered before you have those things in place. The emergency fund, the high interest debt, all that stuff taken care of. Now, a couple questions that come up. Number one, what do I do about business debts? We talked about paying off credit card debt. Maybe I have a line of credit or something else through the business. I would think about that in terms of step number 10. I would consider debt servicing. So if you have a $100,000 outstanding loan against business assets and you pay, I don't know, $1,500 a month toward it, I would incorporate that $1,500 in the business cash fund that you want to have on hand. And remember, step number 2, we want to have at least 1 month worth of operating expenses in there, and I'd include the $1,500 debt servicing. And then back in step 5, we want to expand that to 3 months worth of operating expenses, maybe more, depending on your comfort level. And I would definitely include the debt servicing. Outside of that, other debt beyond credit cards should be pushed down to step number 10. And if you still have more, if you have extra cash coming in, you've already done all that stuff, then one of your options, hey, do I pay off the mortgage a little bit quicker? Do I pay down this outstanding SBA loan that I have through the business? Those are the kind of options that you want to consider. And usually we want to evaluate, do I think I'm going to get a higher rate of return by investing the cash in something new, maybe putting it back into the business? Do I think that's going to produce a greater return? Or maybe invest in public or private securities? Do I think that in a taxable investment portfolio, will that produce a higher return? Because if it's going to produce a lower return than the outstanding debt that you have, either through the mortgage or business loan or whatever, then you want to pay off the debt first. Back to the Dave Ramsey snowball thing that is nice psychologically, but mathematically doesn't really pencil out. Question number 2, as I mentioned earlier, can I go out of order? Of course you can go out of order. There are all sorts of circumstances that might be a good reason to do that. But unless you have a really good, thoughtful reason to tackle step number 8 instead of step number 4, or some other sequence other than what we've talked about today, I would suggest sticking with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Go sequentially. I think for most people that don't have a good reason, this is a really good way to strengthen personal household finances while growing your business. Now, question number 3, this comes up a lot too. How do I decide on an appropriate emergency fund? Remember, we talked about step 1, having 1 month's worth of personal expenses in a cash savings account. Step number 4 is expanding that from 3 to as many as 9, maybe even more months worth of expenses. Think of 3 to 9 months as a spectrum. Where you fall on this spectrum depends on your capacity and willingness to take risk, much like risk tolerance in an investment portfolio. So if you're someone who is approaching retirement and you're really kind of cutting it pretty thin in terms of having enough savings to retire in the first place, and you have a spouse and maybe other dependents who need and depend on your income from your business to maintain their quality of life, those are all factors that you'd want to consider that probably tell me that you want a larger emergency fund. Because if other people are depending on your income, if you're the only income in the household, if you're close to retirement, then you have a smaller capacity to take risk, which tells me you should have more cash on hand in your emergency fund. If you're someone who's younger, let's say you're 35, married, no kids, both you and your spouse work, and you make a lot more money than you spend, you're not going to need your savings, your investment savings anytime soon. Well, then, yeah, you would fall on this shorter end of that spectrum. You can have less cash set aside because you just have more ability to take risks like that. So where you fall on the spectrum depends on your capacity and your willingness to take risk. You could be the 35-year-old making a lot of money, no kids, 2 incomes, and still not be comfortable with the risk and want to have more like 9 or 12 months worth of cash as an emergency fund. There's nothing wrong with that. But those are typically the factors that we want to consider. So yes, you can go out of order. Yes, you can tinker with where you fall on the spectrum of your emergency fund. But I would suggest that you have to have a rational reason to do any of those things. Because if you don't, our brains often just default to what's easiest for us to do, what's easiest for us to process. And that can often be a mistake. So just to recap, step 1, we want a baseline household emergency fund of 1 month's worth of expenses. We want a baseline business cash emergency fund of 1 month of operating expenses. Step 3, we want to pay off all our high interest rate debt, anything above 8%. Step 4, we want to expand that emergency fund in our household to somewhere between 3 and 9 or 12 months, depending on your circumstances. Step 5, we want to expand our business operating cash to 3 months worth of operating expenses, include debt servicing in there too. Number 6, we want to establish a company retirement plan if we don't have one already and save at least 15% of your income. Number 7, we want to pay off all our other debts except for your mortgage. Step 8, we want to maximize our tax-advantaged savings options, workplace retirement plan, traditional Roth IRAs, maybe an HSA. Step number 9, we want to save for our kids' education and other costs. And then step number 10, that's when we want to build wealth and explore other options. Taxable investments, alternative investments, real estate, growing your business more quickly, growth by acquisition, charitable gifts, maybe you spend more, have some more fun, stay in nicer hotels, consider vacation homes, that kind of stuff. Have steps 1 through 9 in place first, is my suggestion for most people. Okay, that's it for today. Hope this was helpful. We'll post all this on the website and probably make some graphics around it too. But that's I think that's a pretty good starter framework for most business owners who are trying to do the right thing with their finances. And if you have any questions or issues with it, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to talk about them. All right, that's it for today. Talk to you all again soon.
Thanks for tuning in to Grow Money Business, the podcast dedicated to helping business owners grow both their wealth and business on their own terms. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you digest podcasts to ensure you don't miss out on future episodes and announcements. And feel free to submit questions to growmoneybusiness.com.